So President Trump reportedly upset about a leak with respect to his briefing about talking to Vlad Putin. And, of course, in addition to that, the fact that it was leaked that he congratulated Putin on his electoral victory, quote unquote. Obviously, he's an autocrat, so we don't have free and fair elections. I think Putin's chief opponent is still serving out the election in prison.
Yeah, exactly.
So
if there was competition, he silenced his competition and imprisoned his competition. But President Trump defended himself, tweeting out, "I called President Putin of Russia to congratulate him on his election victory. The fake news media is crazed because they wanted me to excoriate him. They are wrong. Getting along with Russia and others is a good thing, not a bad thing."
Yeah, and this is what Dan Henninger is talking about in his piece in the Wall Street Journal today, where he advocates for shutting down the Mueller investigation, talking about two sources of madness that are bringing Washington to systemic incapacity. That is the Obama administration and the media cohorts who won't accept Trump's presidential victory, his election victory in 2016. And the other is Trump's repeated admiration for Vlad Putin to the point of obtuseness, writes Henninger. Mr. Trump has never provided a rationale for his attitude toward Mr. Putin. Getting along is kind of kindergarten-ish. That doesn't quite satisfy my disagreement with the president over congratulating. You talk to world leaders. You have to talk to thugs in that job as president to advance our interests. I get that. To congratulate him, to have an unforced hot mic moment that because of the leak, like Obama had with Medvedev about a reset, it's just not helpful. It's not helpful. And it
Trump
feeds the Russian novelists in the D.C. press corps.
Trump tweeted on that Russia can help solve problems with North Korea, Syria, Ukraine, ISIS, Iran, and even the coming arms race.
And
Bush tried to get it done, but he didn't have the smarts. Obama and Clinton tried, but didn't have enough energy or chemistry.
Yeah, maybe I'm making too much of the congratulatory nature of the call, but I don't know why that would be required to enlist Russia. This is about aligning interests, not sucking up to anybody. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Jed Babbin, former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense and now contributor to the Washington Times and the American Spectator. Jed, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good to be here, guys.
Your reaction to the Putin controversy, the latest one?
Well, I think that the president is overlooking the fact, contrary to what Mr. Henninger said, the president has said why he is basically sucking up to Putin, and that is to get help with ISIS and North Korea and Ukraine and Syria and Iran and so forth. The fact of the matter is the president does not understand or doesn't realize or somehow just doesn't get it. That Putin is not going to help us, period, end of sentence. It's Putin's job and Russia's cultural history and political history to obstruct us, to oppose us, and to do everything they can to prevent us from accomplishing what we want to accomplish anywhere in accordance, including all of those countries that he's named. So the president is really, I think, dreaming. He wants to have a non-acrimonious relationship with Putin, and fine, yeah, we need to talk to the guy. And frankly, meeting with Putin is probably not a bad idea, which the president is also now saying he wants to do. But the fact of the matter is he's got to realize that Putin is never going to be our friend. He has never been our friend. And the fact of the matter is that Russia is an enemy. It's an adversary, enemy, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. They're going to oppose us at every turn, and we have to return the favor. In fact, there is a new Cold War going on. The old one ended in about 1989. But the new one is really, it started up roughly at the time that Putin took power in 1999. So this is nothing new. This is something that really has to get a lot more attention, and the president has to get a lot more serious about. He's not serious at this point.
Well, who could reach him? I mean, you have a president who just loves to be loved. And he,
Amy,
that's why he's meeting with Kim Jong-un too, because that is the ultimate reality TV moment. I mean, really, and because he'll want a 3-camera shoot.
Well, look, I all I can tell you is I don't know who this guy listens to. I don't think he listens to anybody, quite frankly. I think he is his own advisor. I think the leak that you saw that John Kelly, White House Chief of Staff, is so angry about the congratulatory nature of the call, that was what you expect from advisors who don't really get the president's trust and who the president doesn't listen to. Every advisor up there thinks that he should be the guy who the president talks to, and the president should follow his advice at every turn. And, of course, that never happens with any president. With this president, again, I don't think he listens to much of anybody, and these advisors really have no control of any of the situations. They want that control, and that's why there were those leaks. And there are continuing leaks from this White House. There are more leaks from this White House than any White House in my memory.
Now, does it additionally concern you when you have foreign service personnel, Russian foreign service personnel, being expelled from the UK over the essential assassination of a former Russian operative? That we're also endangering or diminishing the strength of our relationships with allies like the UK when we have a president saying things that perhaps he shouldn't be saying with respect to Russia.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the reason why those Russians were expelled was that there was a murder occurring conducted by Putin, or at his orders, I should say, in the sovereign territory of the United Kingdom. And Theresa May's response, expelling, I don't know, more than a dozen Russian intelligence officers, we can call them diplomats, but they're FSB guys, no matter how you slice it. The fact is that expelling them is really not that big a deal. The Russians now say they're expelling another, I think, 24 Brits in response to that. So it's business as usual, and these assassinations are going to continue. But when you have an assassin or someone who uses assassination like Kim Jong-un does, there are only two people who, as far as I can tell, two dictators in this world who order the assassination of people using chemical and biological and radioactive weapons. That's Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin. So this is the worst of the worst. His murderers, his death squads go out there and they kill people wherever they are. And, the response from the White House has been pretty weak. He said, well, that shouldn't happen. He should be out there condemning Putin personally and his regime directly. But the president's not doing it. And that does, as you point out, that does weaken our ties to our closest allies, including Britain.
Now, to be fair, and I know this is not a high bar, but as much as the D.C. press corps is whipping itself into a frenzy over Trump's relationship with Putin, you had a previous administration that, number one, didn't take Russia as a serious threat, lampooned Mitt Romney when he suggested as much. And many argue that despite some of his tweets and leaked phone calls, that from a policy perspective, Trump has actually been much tougher on Russia than was his predecessor.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about that. I mean, the sanctions against the Russians, the Russian government, and the 13 individuals plus the 3 companies that were indicted by Bob Mueller, all of those sanctions are much, much tougher than anything Obama did. And I was criticizing Obama roundly and soundly at the time for lack of reaction to the actions of the Russians. So, yeah, I mean, we have had a lot of instances where Trump has been much, much tougher, including, you may or may not be aware of that February 10th incident where a Russian force tried to cross a bridge across the Euphrates River to attack our friends, the Kurds, and we basically, our air power just knocked the hell out of them. We killed about 200 Russians, and you'd never have ever seen that. We never saw anything like that in the days of Obama. So, yeah, Trump is so much better, but he still needs to be much better than he is.
How do you feel about McCabe being fired 48 hours before his retirement was supposed to kick in his pension?
Well, I think it's perfectly fine. It's not a political act, Amy. One of the things we've got to understand is this was recommended. The firing was recommended by the DOJ Office of Professional Responsibility after the Inspector General looked at what McCabe had done. So this did not it was never a political decision. McCabe should have been fired. And quite frankly, he's not going to be deprived of his pension. He's just not going to get it as early as he might want it. I think he's only 45 or 48 years old, and he's not going to get it till he's 60. Well, okay, he'll get a job.
National security, as somebody who is part of our national security infrastructure previously in a previous life, what's your reaction to the switching out of Rex Tillerson, the switching in of Mike Pompeo, Gina Haspel at CIA, that shakeup?
Well, I think Tillerson had to go, should have gone. He had in December pretty much begged the North Koreans to come to the table and negotiate with us. He'd say, "Oh, we'll negotiate about the weather. We'll talk about the shape of the table. Just come, please, talk to us." That kind of weakness had to be dispensed with, and quite frankly, the sooner he got booted, the better. I don't know how Pompeo is going to work out. We'll have to see. Pompeo is more close to Trump than Tillerson ever was, and he's got a shot at least being a better representative of the president. As to Gina Haspel, she has, a lot of different credentials in her background. People are telling me that not only did she have some good things, like she ran part of the enhanced interrogation program, but also she is a Brennan clone, and she may very well be an Obama type. No, that's not good. John Brennan is one of the worst CIA directors we've ever had, and if she's one of his proteges and one of his clones, she may not work out at all. So, again, we just have to see how it plays. There are a lot of other people I'd like to have seen in that job, but, that's showbiz. That's not my choice. That's Mr. Trump's.
Well, that's an interesting insight on Haspel. We'll definitely watch that closely because that would be a disaster. Brennan gets worse and worse with each passing day. He is Jed Babbin, former United States Deputy Undersecretary of Defense, contributor to the Washington Times and the American Spectator's his latest column, Putin's Death Squad. So we're checking out. Jed, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.